Hello everyone, welcome back to my M.O.W channel. Today, we will be discussing the 2018 Chris Watts family murder case. Before we begin, please make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Now, let's start today's video. Frederick, Colorado, a quiet suburban town. A typical American middle-class neighborhood. Among its neatly lined houses stood the home of Chris and Shannon Watts, a family that, from the outside, seemed to embody the spirit of the American dream. Their life was constantly shared across social media, and many people viewed them as a model of perfection. Chris appeared to be a clean-cut, hard-working engineer, while Shannon was an energetic and successful network marketing entrepreneur selling energy drinks and nutritional supplements. Her Facebook was filled with photos of their two adorable daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, smiling, traveling, and showered with her affectionate praise for Chris as a devoted husband and father. And, at the time, Shannon was pregnant with their third child, a baby boy named Nico. Soon, they would be a family of 5. Everything about their life reinforced Chris's image as the ideal husband and caring father. But behind the polished, cheerful facade, a darker and deeply troubled reality was unfolding. The Watts marriage had been strained for years. In 2015, they filed for bankruptcy, burdened by overwhelming debt. A large mortgage, student loans, credit card debt, pressures that loomed constantly over them. Although Shannon's business seemed to revive their finances, the emotional cracks in their marriage only deepened. Text messages later revealed Shannon's mounting anxiety and frustration. Her fears that Chris was drifting away emotionally and physically, the feeling that intimacy had vanished, and her belief that he was passive, easily swayed, and unwilling to defend her even in conflicts involving his own family. Shannon confided in friends that she felt she was carrying the entire weight of the household alone. Despite being pregnant, she expressed little joy and even considered selling the house and moving to a different state for a fresh start. At the peak of this marital tension, Chris met Nicole Kessinger, a co-worker at Anadarko Petroleum. Chris lied to Nicole, telling her he was almost divorced and that his marriage was essentially over. They began an affair in early July 2018. To Chris, Nicole represented escape, a new life free from responsibility and emotional conflict. He saw her as his future. He met her frequently, nearly 4 to 5 times a week, fully living a double life, rarely mentioning his family. With Shannon and the children away in North Carolina for the summer, the affair intensified. Chris indulged in his secret fantasy life while distancing himself coldly from Shannon, ignoring her messages and calls. Shannon, distressed and confused, told friends she feared her marriage was collapsing beyond repair. When Shannon returned home from a business trip on August 13, 2018, at 1:48 a.m., everything reached a breaking point. Shortly before arriving, she had messaged Chris, saying she and the children might never see him again. Further evidence of their crumbling relationship. Upon returning, she confronted him about the affair, and Chris admitted he wanted a divorce. According to reports, Chris coldly told her, "I don't want you or the baby," referring to her unborn son, Nico. In the heated argument that followed, Chris strangled Shannon in their bedroom. In that moment, the mask of the perfect family man fell away, revealing a man who chose murder over accountability. A father willing to destroy his own family to pursue a selfish fantasy. The motive was chillingly simple. Chris wanted a new life free from financial stress, marital tension, and the responsibilities of fatherhood. Instead of confronting reality or seeking help, he chose the most horrific path imaginable, believing that by eliminating his family, he could start over with Nicole. His desperate, twisted desire for freedom led him to commit one of the most disturbing family annihilation cases in modern American history. In the early morning of August 13, shortly after a horrifying crime occurred in a quiet residential neighborhood in Frederick, Colorado, Chris Watts began his chilling performance. Having murdered his pregnant wife, Shannon Watts, and their 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, Chris acted as though he were simply getting ready for work. Like any other ordinary father, he then proceeded to move their bodies out of the house, a process captured by a neighbor's surveillance camera. The footage showed Chris backing his truck into the garage and loading items into it, becoming the first crucial piece of evidence, indicating he was transporting something secretly. After loading the bodies and driving to the Anadarko oil site, where he worked to dispose of them, he returned home and continued his day as if nothing had happened. The family's disappearance did not become officially known until the next day. Shannon's close friend and business partner, Nicole Atkinson, became alarmed after failing to reach her. Shannon had texted Nicole that she had returned home from a business trip early that morning, but after that, there had been no response at all. An unusual and alarming break from Shannon's normally active social media and communication habits. After also failing to reach Chris, Nicole immediately called the police. As a result, Frederick police officers were dispatched to the Watts home, where Chris, arriving shortly afterward, began his performance. As officers searched the house, Chris maintained an eerie calm. He claimed he had no idea where his wife and children went and spoke without panic or fear. He suggested Shannon might have taken the children to a friend's house and conveyed mild concern, but nothing resembling the terror or desperation expected from a husband and father in such a situation. His lack of genuine emotion paired with an overly rational, detached demeanor raised immediate suspicion among investigators. Soon after, Chris voluntarily appeared in a televised interview, seeking to draw public attention to the missing family. Tearfully and with a trembling voice, he pleaded, "If someone has taken them, please bring them back. I just want my family back." To many viewers, he initially appeared to be a grieving husband, but to investigators, behavioral experts, and observant viewers, small, unsettling details began to stand out, including a subtle upward twitch at the corner of his mouth as he cried, suggesting forced emotion and revealing cracks in his facade. Police and FBI investigators began meticulously examining inconsistencies in Chris's statements. Nicole Atkinson's testimony directly contradicted Chris's claims. She confirmed Shannon had no plans to take the children to a friend's house, and crucially, Shannon's car, the children's car seats, her phone, and her wallet were all still in the house. A pregnant woman traveling with 2 young children would never leave without such essentials. These facts alone strongly suggested Chris's story was a lie. Investigators also began digging into Chris's personal life and soon uncovered his affair. The existence of his co-worker, Nicole Kessinger, came to light. Nicole cooperated with police and revealed details of their relationship and conversations, making it clear Chris wanted to end his marriage. Chris had lied to Nicole, claiming he was almost divorced, and during the family's time away in North Carolina, he spent significant time with Nicole. This revelation shattered Chris's narrative of being a helpless victim of circumstance and pointed decisively toward motive. Cornered, Chris agreed to take a polygraph test on August 15 and failed. The results strongly indicated deception regarding his family's disappearance. With the failed test and evidence of infidelity, investigators intensified their pressure. Unable to maintain the lie any longer, Chris chose to offer a false partial confession, one designed to shift blame onto his murdered wife and portray himself as reacting to her actions. In doing so, he exposed the depths of his manipulation and cowardice. At this moment, his facade of the perfect husband began to completely crumble. August 15. Inside an interrogation room at the Frederick Police Department, Chris Watts had reached the climax of his 2-day performance. As the grieving husband, the polygraph test results were unmistakable. He had lied about the whereabouts of his family. Investigators confronted him, linking his infidelity with the disappearance of his wife and children, cornering him with mounting evidence. Unable to maintain his false persona any longer, Chris finally began to talk not out of remorse or a desire to confess the truth, but to selectively reveal only what could benefit him, and to place the most brutal blame imaginable on his murdered wife. His first confession took place in front of the investigators and his father, Ronnie Watts, who had been brought in to encourage his son to tell the truth. In a trembling, tear-filled voice, Chris admitted to killing someone, but the narrative he spun was carefully crafted to paint himself as a victim. According to his account, in the early morning of August 13, the day Shannon returned home from her business trip, they argued intensely over his affair and his desire for divorce. When Chris told Shannon he wanted to end the marriage, she allegedly reacted furiously and threatened, "You will never see the kids again." Chris claimed that shortly afterward, while preparing to leave for work, he saw something horrifying on the baby monitor: Shannon strangling their daughters, Bella and Celeste. In a fit of rage, he claimed, he killed Shannon in a moment of defensive anger, strangling her in retaliation. This fabricated confession reveals Chris Watts' true nature, more clearly than anything else. Driven by selfish desire, his affair, and his fantasy of a new life, he attempted to escape responsibility by framing Shannon for murdering their children and painting himself as a devastated husband responding to unimaginable provocation. His goal was twofold: first, to downgrade his crime from premeditated murder to an act of passion, reducing his punishment; second, to shift public outrage onto Shannon, gaining sympathy as a shocked, grieving father. It was a vicious betrayal, not only murdering his wife and children, but posthumously accusing Shannon of killing her own daughters. Investigators listening to Chris could immediately sense that his story was implausible. A pregnant woman 15 weeks along murdering her own daughters in silence, without struggle or noise? The scenario defied logic. Moreover, investigators already knew about his affair with Nicole Kessinger and the desperation he expressed to start a new life with her. His attempt to suddenly transform from killer to avenger was doomed from the start. During the continued interrogation, however, Chris did reveal one crucial fact: the location of the bodies. Unable to withstand further pressure, he admitted the remains were at the Anadarko petroleum site, where he worked. The remote, isolated oil field, a place he visited daily, proved he had planned the crime and disposal, not acted impulsively. It was a chilling demonstration of calculated intent. This first false confession pushed the investigation into a new phase, while simultaneously exposing the depths of Chris Watts' depravity. The man who should have protected and cherished his family, betrayed them in the cruelest possible way, killing them to pursue a fantasy of freedom, then attempting to destroy Shannon's reputation even in death. His desperate attempt to protect his image only revealed his true face to the world. This chapter stands as the moment when his mask finally fell, and the horrifying truth beneath it was exposed. On August 16, when Chris Watts finally revealed the location where he had dumped the bodies, investigators rushed to the Anadarko petroleum oil field, located dozens of miles from Frederick, Colorado. This was a site where Chris had worked for a long time, a vast and barren expanse far from civilization. The location itself was clear evidence that Chris had attempted to use his professional knowledge to conceal the crime. Guided by him, FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation (CBI) agents deployed drones and specialized equipment to begin the search. This was not a missing person search, it was a hunt for decisive evidence in what was already being treated as a family annihilation case. At the location Chris pointed to, investigators soon discovered the first body. It was his wife, Shannon Watts, buried in a shallow grave beneath a mound of dirt on the oil site. Shannon, who was 15 weeks pregnant, was found first, instantly undermining Chris's initial claim that she had killed their children. But the most shocking discovery was still to come. Not far from where Shannon lay stood two massive crude oil storage tanks. Chris told investigators that his daughters, Bella and Celeste, were inside those tanks. These industrial containers, filled with toxic crude oil, were designed to store petroleum pumped from the ground. Officers and recovery crews faced the horrific task of retrieving the tiny bodies through the tank's small hatches, a process that starkly revealed the brutality of the crime. When the oil-soaked bodies of the two little girls were recovered, even veteran investigators were left shaken. It was not only that he had murdered his daughters with his own hands, he had disposed of their bodies in corrosive crude oil, an action that displayed not panic, but a calculated attempt to erase their existence entirely. Immediately after the bodies were found, authorities confronted Chris again. His claim that Shannon killed the kids first was now impossible to sustain. With no more lies to hide behind, Chris finally confessed to the true sequence of events. This second confession marked the darkest and most horrific peak of the investigation. Chris admitted he strangled Shannon at home while their daughters were still asleep. As he wrapped her body in a blanket and dragged it to his truck, his older daughter, Bella, woke up and came into the living room. Half awake, she asked, "What's wrong with Mommy?" Chris told her, "Mommy's not feeling well." Moments later, he placed both girls in the back seat of his truck along with their mother's dead body, then drove for nearly an hour to the oil site. The two little girls rode beside their murdered mother without knowing the fate that awaited them. Upon arriving at the site, Chris first suffocated Celeste. He covered her mouth and nose with his hand. She offered little resistance before dying. Chris then placed her body in one of the oil tanks. What happened next was the most tragic and chilling moment. Bella had witnessed everything. She looked at her father and asked, "Daddy, is the same thing going to happen to me that happened to Cece?" Her question revealed she understood the horror unfolding and feared her own death. Chris claimed he didn't clearly remember how he answered her, but moments later, he suffocated Bella as well. Bella fought back fiercely, crying, "Daddy, no," as she struggled to breathe. The autopsy later revealed injuries inside her mouth. She had bitten her tongue and cheek multiple times while fighting for her life. To her very last breath, the little girl resisted her own father. This second confession destroyed any remaining pretense that Chris's actions had been impulsive or defensive. He admitted that he killed his pregnant wife and daughters not in a sudden rage, but to free himself from his marriage, hide his affair, and start a new life, one where his family never existed. Behind the mask of a loving husband and father was a cold-blooded family annihilator, willing to murder even his unborn child to satisfy his selfish desires. In this moment, the devastating climax of the case, the brutal truth emerged in the most horrifying way imaginable. In November 2018, the judicial conclusion of the Chris Watts family murder case was delivered at the Weld County District Court in Colorado. Because the case had already shocked and enraged the nation, many expected that Chris Watts would receive the death penalty. Surprisingly, however, the trial ended not with a death sentence, but with life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This decision reflected the firm wishes of the victim's family, Shannon Watts' parents, Frank and Sandra Rtsusek. The Rtsusek family clearly expressed to prosecutors that instead of seeking the death penalty, they wanted Chris to spend the rest of his life rotting in prison, suffering under the weight of his guilt. They believed that a swift death would allow him to escape too easily, and that true justice would be for him to live every day haunted by what he had done. Respecting the family's wishes, prosecutors agreed not to pursue capital punishment. In exchange, Chris waived his right to a jury trial and pled guilty to all charges, accepting a sentence of life without parole. On November 19, 2018, Chris Watts stood for sentencing after pleading guilty to multiple counts. 3 counts of first-degree murder for killing his wife, Shannon Watts, and unborn son Nico. 2 counts of murder and child abuse for killing his daughters, Bella and Celeste. 1 count related to the unlawful termination of a pregnancy. And 3 counts of tampering with a deceased body. 9 charges in total. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms without parole, plus an additional 84 years in prison. Before issuing the sentence, Judge Marcelo Kopkow expressed deep anger and disgust at the crime. He described it as one of the most inhumane and vicious cases he had encountered in thousands of cases over his career, strongly condemning Chris Watts' cold-blooded brutality. During the sentencing hearing, Shannon's father, Frank Rtsusek Jr., delivered a victim impact statement that moved the entire courtroom to tears. Looking directly at Chris, he spoke of his immense love for his daughter and grandchildren, and the unbearable loss their murder brought to his family. He remembered Shannon as a devoted mother and described Bella and Celeste as joyful and lively children whose lives were stolen too soon. His heartfelt testimony vividly conveyed the value of the 4 innocent lives destroyed, and the devastating void left behind. Frank and Sandra Rtsusek later changed Shannon, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico's last names from Watts to Shannon's maiden name, Rtsusek. This symbolic act severed all remaining ties to Chris Watts and served as a statement of love and remembrance for their family. Even after the court's decision, the case left a profound social impact. The greatest shock came from the contrast between Chris's public image and his hidden reality. He had carefully projected the persona of a loving husband and father on social media, making his crimes an unsettling example of how family annihilators often hide behind a crafted mask of normalcy. The release of the Netflix original documentary American Murder: The Family Next Door further amplified global attention. Using only real footage, police recordings, Shannon's lively Facebook videos, and text messages, the documentary reconstructed the story from an intimate perspective. Viewers experienced Shannon's hopes, fears, and final moments with chilling closeness. The film sparked widespread discussion about how social media can create illusions of happiness and mask underlying dysfunction. Chris Watts is currently serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in Wisconsin, rather than in Colorado. Even behind bars, he has continued to draw controversy. He claims to have found religion and speaks of seeking God, and reportedly keeps photos of his murdered wife and daughters in his cell, talking to them daily, behavior that once again disturbed investigators. Perhaps most shocking to the public was the influx of fan mail he received in prison. Letters from women expressing admiration toward him highlighted the disturbing phenomenon of hybristophilia, a fascination with violent criminals which sparked further societal reflection on how some individuals romanticize perpetrators of horrific crimes. Ultimately, the conclusion of the Chris Watts case represented far more than a legal judgment. It stands as a harrowing reminder of how one man's selfishness and infidelity obliterated an entire family. The case also underscored the false realities curated on social media, the hidden warning signs of domestic violence, and the power of victims' families in ensuring justice. It remains one of the most shocking tragedies in modern American criminal history. That concludes today's story. Please like and subscribe. We'll return tomorrow with another true crime case and mystery. Thank you for watching.